All right, everybody, welcome back. On today's episode, I talk about what to do if you've fallen out of love with your business, or dare I say it, quote unquote, hate your business. I've supported many entrepreneurs who have fallen out of love with their business because they were out of alignment at the deepest level. So, like, what happens and what to do when you feel disconnected from your business? When your marketing or messaging or your tasks every day feel like a chore and they're uninspired, or when you fall asleep and wake up with dread from this thing that you used to be passionate about, this thing that used to light you up now feels overwhelming. And so in today's episode, I break down exactly why this happens and how to pivot only one of two ways and the steps to follow to be able to bring it back into alignment to help yourself break through that next plateau of clients or that next plateau of delivery or hiring a team member or increasing your revenue. And I'm really excited. It's juicy. And I even had notes to make it really easy and congruent for you to follow. So I stayed on track with the questions and everything. And so if you see me looking away from the camera, it's because I was looking at my notes. So it wasn't a 10-hour show, but this one I'm excited about. And I cannot wait to read your DM. So after this show, I would love for you to shoot me a DM on Instagram and share your biggest takeaway or your clarity, or even ask me a question if I can help you navigate any of this. But I'm going to stop now. The episode is juicy. It's loaded with nuggets. So without further ado, let's get into the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. And today I'm really excited about the topic because it has been coming up a ton. What to do if you fall out of love with your business, if you fall out of alignment, or for lack of better terms, and the term that I've used and heard recently is like, what if you hate your business? I've supported many entrepreneurs, myself included, who have fallen out of in love with their business. And so what happens when you feel disconnected from your business, when you're in your marketing, you're in your messaging, you're in your delivery, and it feels like a chore, or it leaves you feeling uninspired, or you start to dread it rather than being excited about it, right? When you're falling asleep, waking up, and it almost feels heavy before you move into it anymore. And there's things that used to bring you joy that just no longer feel like they're in alignment. Many, and I mean many entrepreneurs, and I might be bold and say all because I can only use myself as an example in my clients, but myself, I think at some point, at some stage, and it's completely normal, all entrepreneurs struggle at some point with burnout or misalignment in their business, whether it's a small dose or a large dose. And in this episode, I'm going to break down and explore why this happens and how to pivot in one of the two P's to be able to bring it into alignment without blowing everything up, because that is one of the biggest mistakes that happens is we either blow it up or we accidentally blow it up, leaving it worse than where we started. And so before we even dive into the episode, I just want you to know, if you're watching this on video, I'm actually going to be looking to my left because I am in a season of growth and realizing that I can be better for you, deliver content better by having more structure and frameworks. And so I have my iPad to my left with all my notes, including questions and prompts that I'm going to ask you. And at the end of the episode, I'm also going to lay out the exact steps that we take our clients through and anybody we work with to be able to bring that business back into alignment. So if you see me looking off, it's so that I can stay on path with you, I can stay on pace for you, and I can keep this focused and directed to be massively, massively valuable for you. And so one of the most important places to start is by asking ourselves a very, very serious and intentional question. And most importantly, not expecting an answer in 30 seconds, right? The answer could come. It could come in a minute, it could come in 10 minutes, or it could be something that you've already had awarenesses of, but we haven't really taken the time to pause and allow the answers or the pieces to fall into place. And that question is really, really simple. Is the business that you've built in its current state still aligned with who you are today? Or are you sticking with it because, air quote, it's what you've always done? Or that's the way I did it, that's the way I've always done it, and there's no way to change. And so the question is really, really simple. Is the business you've built still aligned with who you are today? Or are you sticking with it because it's what you've always done? And the reason I bring this up is because I have found personally, and with most of my dear clients, my close clients, the evidence starts to get really, really sneaky. We see this all the time of like, I don't like how I feel, so I'm just going to do more. I'm going to do more, more, more. But there's a couple really, really easy ways to understand if you might be feeling out of alignment at the deepest level. Number one, and the most obvious and biggest one, is procrastination, or avoiding your tasks that you know are connected to business growth. I know that when I take this action, it supports my business. I know when I respond to my clients, it gets them results. I know when I create this podcast, it brings new eyeballs and visibility into my business, right? Another one is blaming ourselves or calling ourselves lazy, right? Falling into the trap of the self-deprecation to where we start to doubt ourselves. We start to speak ill about ourselves. And luckily, I have a 7-year-old son who's around me most of the time, and he listens to a lot of my audio messages and client calls. And he's also built in and baked in as an accountability tool for me, because he will say, Dad, I don't like the way that you spoke about yourself. Why did you call yourself an idiot? And I get to say thank you and realize that it's a sign that something's out of alignment or there's something that I'm not acknowledging, right? Another big one, and this is one I see, especially with a lot of my female clients, because most of my clients, I'd say it's like 90% incredible women and 10% incredible men. Why? I don't know, but I have this soft spot for helping female entrepreneurs, including male entrepreneurs, but I have a lot of them. But one of them is feeling ashamed or disliking the success in their business, feeling afraid to celebrate the wins, no matter how big or how small, or even deeper, achieving a goal or a vision that they set out to achieve, whether it was their first $10,000 month, their first $50,000 month, their first $1 million, and almost feeling guilty in having that success and questioning, is it okay? Do they deserve it? And that's one that's really, really rampant that runs around. And what it ends up leading to, and most of these symptoms lead to, is isolation and silence around the answer to that question, right? Procrastination is often, and I mean often, mislabeled as laziness, when at the deepest level, it's a sign of misalignment. It's us having an understanding and a knowing at a deep level, whether conscious or unconscious, that the actions and behaviors that we're taking aren't in alignment with who we want to be or where we want to go. And so we procrastinate, we put them off. And then people will say, we're lazy, we're distracted, we have ADHD, you're bouncing all over the place. But there's a deeper issue and there's a deeper question and, quite frankly, path to follow underneath it to be able to bring it back into alignment, right? So I know for me, and I can speak personally, is that I know for times and seasons in business where I used to struggle is I would avoid marketing or creating content or product development because I was no longer passionate about it, right? I wasn't excited to get on sales calls because there was a part of me that didn't like my offer or how I was delivering that offer. And so I fell out of love with it and I wasn't excited to deliver it anymore. And I've even seen literally entrepreneurs who have made 6 and 7 figures, but completely hated the business structure or sales process. And so what it led them to believe is that they could no longer be successful and they started to hit this plateau. And it's really interesting from the outside in for me to help see, because they love their clients, they love the results that they get them, but the structure and process that they created in the beginning is no longer serving them as an entrepreneur. And a resentment towards the process is what actually created the plateau. And so there's a lot of ways where we start to see this. I know another one that I see all the time is trying to come up with new ideas, new places to focus, but none of them excite you, right? You walk around with this like dread or overwhelm, or do I have to make that video? Do I have to make that reel? And you start to fall in that have to trap instead of the get to. And then even if you get excited, even if you start to make progress, it happens inconsistently. So you'll get that ideal, you'll get that spark, but it doesn't last long before you get bored or you're over it again and you're back in the trap. And it feels like you get stuck inside of this washing machine, constantly seeking new dopamine spikes and distractions and hits, right? I want to go to another event. I want to make a new offer. I want to do another program development. And I even had a client who made literally 4 new offers within 6 months before we got a hold of them, and then realized that none of them supported them and they went right back to their core offer. But it did help them realize that they were out of alignment, not with who they served or how they served them per se, but a lot of the process and pieces were no longer in alignment, and it was preventing them from focusing on what would grow their business, right? Another really easy symptom is understanding that your income is plateaued. And no matter what you do, no matter what you feel, no matter what you try, it feels like absolutely nothing is helping. So you end up feeling stuck and in this plateau and completely unsure what your next move is. And when that happens, you start to doubt, you start to get overwhelmed, and it's really, really rampant. And I have found too, it's very, very sticky. It's almost like a self-fulfilling machine that the more you get stuck in those awarenesses, and the more you're out of alignment and try to compensate without asking that deep question and focusing on the 3 steps that I'm going to lay out below, the stickier and stickier it is. And a perspective shift is one of the biggest shifts to get out of it. And it's important to understand like why this happens. And I think a lot of people don't acknowledge what entrepreneurship is like. And I know for me in my industry, and I'm going on 15 years or so being in marketing and digital marketing, we see this all the time in people's marketing and people's messaging and their courses and their programs. And you're told over and over and over that there is the right way to do business. This is the only way to do business by somebody else who has the goal or the success that you desire. And most entrepreneurs, and myself included, as I've walked this path many years ago, built my business based on someone else's blueprint because I didn't trust myself and I feared that the only way to do it was their way, that there was no way to do it in my way or do events my way or deliver coaching in my way. And it left me feeling completely stuck because the more and more I did it, the less like myself and the less excited I was to keep going. And so we take action in business along the way. And when it doesn't resonate at the time, we ignore the voice within and we kept going and we're like, oh, it'll change in the future, or I just have to do this right now. And it just starts to spiral and spiral and spiral. And so you end up making offers and doing sales and making marketing based on what others online were doing as your inspiration. And what ends up happening is we end up creating somebody else's business and we try to force ourselves to become that person with habits and behaviors and beliefs. But all that does is lead us feeling worse and worse and worse. And it's an old version of us, and we no longer resonate with that perspective or approach to business anymore. And so we end up feeling stuck instead of recognizing that there's levels and steps to the game. There's steps that we have to follow, like checkpoints in a marathon. And early on, of course, we're going to borrow frameworks and we're going to say, oh, I want to do it that way. Like that resonates with me. I'm going to try that. But along the path, we stop realizing that we get to make it our recipe to be in alignment with us at the deepest level. And it gets to be our approach to business. It gets to be our approach to delivery. It gets to be our approach to marketing and our approach to content creation and our approach to customer journey. Because if it's not, we're never going to be able to do it consistently, or we end up in a byproduct in that washing machine that I've been referencing, right? And it's really easy to think about like when you grow as a person. Like I think about what I used to look like in junior high school and the clothes that I used to wear. And if I put those outfits on right now, they would not feel like me. I would be like, ugh, I don't want to wear this, or I can't believe I used to wear that. And there was even a season in my life where I went through my golf season and I was like plaid shorts and yellow hoodies all day. I have no idea what I was thinking. I have no idea who allowed me to buy those clothes. And I see pictures of them now and I laugh at myself because I'm like, I can't do that. Or even when I had a Croc season, and I know I love you all to pieces. I won't judge you based on your ability to love Crocs or not love Crocs or wear them or not wear them. But I am not a Croc person. But there was a season in my life where I was going into off-roading mode and high speed mode and I was wearing Crocs. And now I'm like, no way. And I'm sure there's going to be a season in 5 to 10 years where the shorts and the Timbs look is no longer supporting me. But that's what it starts to feel like. It starts to feel like who you are in the business or how you operate in the business, or for lack of a better analogy, the clothes that you wear in the business no longer feel like you. And then the more and more you try to make them feel like you, the more resistant you become to it, further feeding the cycle of that plateau or staying stuck or starting to collect evidence or resentment or that shame on the inside or the procrastination, all because we didn't align it to who we are and what we do. And so when I work with clients and when we do this at events and when we do this with our clients and in intensives, it's really important to understand that there's only a couple hidden triggers of burnout that lead us into alignment. And I have a model on this that I call the rocks, reefs, and shoals model. And it helps us identify where in our actions and our behaviors and in our beliefs that we're operating out of alignment, where we may feel stuck or overwhelmed, and realizing that the outfit that we used to wear no longer fits us and no longer feels good to us. And when we start to identify them, it leads to the most important step, which I'm going to get to in a minute, on how to actually take a course of action to bring it back into alignment. And this is where I'm going to look over at my notes to make sure that I hit everything that you need if you see me looking away from the camera, because I want to deliver this perfectly for you, not perfectly, in progress, but I want to make sure that I don't go off track. And so when we really, really think about it, right, I think really when we fall out of love or fall out of alignment with our business, it's really easy to label it as like burnout, right? Or we're having resistance or we're overwhelmed. And when we think about it, there's really only one of three buckets that the symptoms that we experience occur in. And they're what I call rocks, reefs, and shoals. And so rocks, just like the ocean, if you're in a boat in the ocean and you're driving through the ocean or in a lake, you can look out over the water and you can see a rock sticking out of the water. They're the things that happen on the outside, right? They're the obvious symptoms or stressors that are super easy to acknowledge and to see, right? I'm feeling burnt out and tired. I'm constantly drained. I don't have the energy. I'm bouncing from task to task. I'm getting distracted. I'm consuming too much content on social media, right? Those are what we call the rocks. Those are literally gifts for a coach or for somebody who's helping you recognize where you're out of alignment in your patterns or in your behaviors and not doing the thing that you're passionate about. The second one is what we call reefs. And the reason I use an ocean is because there's no reefs in lakes, or I've yet to find any, and I'm a scuba diver. And reefs are, if you're just looking over the surface of the water, you can't really see them. But the moment you look over that water and look right underneath the surface, you can see that the reefs are there. And so these are what we call the hidden beliefs, right? This is just under the surface. And these are the hidden beliefs that drastically impact our decisions and where we spend our time. And so with the reefs, this is where the inner dialogue comes in, right? We start doubting ourselves. We go into tasks and we're like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm not good at this anymore. Is anybody even going to like this? Is this even valuable, right? We start to have this increased feeling of imposter syndrome where we're like, I don't know why these clients got results. I don't know why they're still hiring me. And that's the energy and the thoughts that are spinning and ruminating throughout our head. And it's almost like a duck on a pond, right? On the surface, the duck looks calm, but underneath the water, his feet are paddling at like 1,000,000 miles a minute. And so it's calm on the outside and frantic on the inside. And that rumination trap is going over and over and over again. And so those are what we call the reefs. And then the last one are shoals. And if you don't know what a shoal is like a landmass in the bottom of the ocean, like a sandbar that appeared that boats go, they get not shipwrecked. What is that? They get beached with, right? Because they're not on the map. There was a big shift, like a paradigm shift, like a life event happened or something traumatically happened, or this belief that we had from our parents is there. And it's like this undertone of like our paradigm or how we see the world driving everything, right? And I've seen this in clients a lot of different ways. Like they'll launch a business and they'll get to 6 figures, but then it will never break that. And then they'll close that business, launch another one, and it will get to 6 figures because at some deep level, they have a belief that that's the biggest business that they can build or the most impact that they can have. And so the shoals are like the deep-rooted fears or limiting paradigms that only show up when they cause big disruptions, right? And so when you really, really want to start to understand these things, I'm going to give you another question to ask. And I want you to really, really sit with this question. If you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if anything I've shared on today's podcast resonates with you, I want you to ask yourself the question, is there a hidden belief or fear underneath it that I'm not addressing? And it could be a little one, it could be a big one, but there's something in there, right? And I know this personally, and I can take my fitness journey as an example, as somebody who was an active duty Marine and a competitive athlete and really was in shape for a lot of my life. I ended up in a relationship with my ex-wife, who I love dearly, and she's amazing, and we have my incredible son. But there became a season where on the outside, everything in business was great, but on the inside, I was the most unhappy I'd ever been. And I was even convincing myself that I couldn't ever weigh under 200 pounds, and I was just destined and born to be this way. And there was nothing that I could do to change it. But here I am at 40 now with a 6-pack and in the best shape of my life. But it wasn't because I changed my actions and habits. It's that I changed my beliefs. And I started to address the fears and the stories and all that residue that was getting in the way. And that's when I was able to navigate out of it and not only lose it, but keep it off. And it'll be off forever because I've changed my beliefs and what I deserve. And so when we really, really start to sit with these things, the number one goal is to have awareness. Thich Nhat Hanh, who was an incredible Buddhist philosopher who I've followed for years and recently passed away, had this incredible story. And I summarized the quote as like one of my favorite takeaways from him, which is awareness is the finish line. And my son has this book that I've read him every night since he was a kid called Bear Through the Woods. Not every night, but a lot of nights for many, many nights in a row. And it's, you can't go over it. You can't go under it. You can't go around it. You must go through it. But in order to go through something, the first step is to actually acknowledge where we are. And acknowledging where we are is like becoming the triage nurse of what's preventing our success, on how we're putting the lid on our own success or on our own business, whether it's how we communicate with our team, it's how we go about our day-to-day habits and behaviors, it's how we operate in our fitness and in our sleep and in our day-to-day activities, it's how we go about creating content or communicating with clients, right? It's really asking ourselves the questions that get in the way of us being in our superpower. And so if you feel stuck, I want you to ask yourself this question. Is there a hidden belief or a fear underneath that you're not addressing? Because once you start there, that is actually the first step in the 3-step process to be able to fall back in love with your business and to be in alignment at the deepest level. And so when I'm working with clients and we navigate this to bring it into alignment, we always follow the same 3 steps, okay? And so step number 1 is you have to acknowledge where you are. And I mean fully acknowledge with integrity and excitement. Just like I've gone through so many seasons of business and so many seasons of life. What got me here is I get to be extremely grateful for, because without it, I wouldn't be here. But what got me here isn't always guaranteed to get me there. And so radical honesty is the first step towards pivoting in a way that feels aligned and sustainable. And it is completely okay. And I'm going to give you a permission slip right now. It is completely okay to admit that your business no longer feels like you, or no longer feels in alignment, or how you operate your day isn't exciting anymore. But it is not okay to burn it to the ground. But it always starts with full acknowledging, which is what we call the current state. And once you've fully acknowledged where you are, what you've really identified is all the signs and symptoms where you're out of alignment and where you're out of integrity, to be able to start to paint the picture of what your vision would look like for this next season. And that's when we move into step 2. And step 2 is where we set clear expectations on what we value. And so we have to recognize that with any change in execution can also come a connection to things and adjustments happening. So like in one of those cases, and I'll give a tangible example to make this make sense. I had a client come to me who wanted to scale their business from 30K a month up to 100K a month. And one of the first conversations I had as we went through this process was like, hey, the life that we're living today is a trailing effect of the previous 90 days, which means the results that we're looking for and are going to create are going to be the byproduct of the next 90 days of actions. And so in that lens, when we're making a shift, when we're changing our behaviors, there's a chance that things will stay plateaued or dip down a little bit before they go back up. And they were like, yeah, okay, yeah, right. And like we predicted it on paper, it was around 30K a month, and then 30K a month, and then 28K a month, and then about 25K a month. And the fear was coming in. And then the next month, I got the craziest message I've ever seen. And they're like, we just hit 60K a month. And then the next month was 80K a month. And then the next month was 110K a month. And so it's important to understand, once you start to bring things back into alignment, the first thing you always do is acknowledge where you are with integrity. Then number 2 is you set clear expectations for yourself. And then you start to work in outcomes and measure things based on what you value. Things that you value today, but what you're going to value in the future, to be able to make a plan. And then the third most important step before you pick a path on bringing things back into alignment is to focus on the why, not the what. The why. Why do you do this? Why do you love this? Why do you want this life? Why do you want this business? Like, what is the why that's going to keep you going, even when seasons gets hard or the market changes? And so instead of focusing solely, like the mistake most people, myself included, have made on tactics, like I'm going to do this one tactic, or I'm going to do this one webinar, or I'm going to do this one method, or I'm going to only do high ticket closing, or I'm only going to sell in the DMs, or I'm only going to use this sales funnel. We reconnect with the why behind our business. And the why behind our business is to be able to serve our clients, or to help them get results, or help them with their copy, or help, for me, like help them with their customer journey and their mindset, right? To be the catalyst for their change, to be congruent with who they are and the message that they deliver, and then to create community around that movement and build and scale their business. But you have to be aware and really lit up about your North Star before you take any plan of action and make a plan on how to do it, or else it's never going to stick. And one of my clients, Kate Perkovic, says this all the time, is you don't go to the gym on day one and get upset that you didn't get abs right away. But if the end goal is to be healthy and have energy and live a longer life, then you follow that path consistently with the habits and behaviors that bring it into alignment. And so those 3 steps are the most important steps to go through before you pick a pathway to bring it back into alignment. And when you are bringing it back into alignment, there are only 2 ways that I have found to bring it into alignment. And it's what we call the pivot or the pause. The pivot or the pause. And so step 1 is, with integrity, you fully acknowledge where you are. Step 2 is you set clear expectations and outline what it is that you value. Step 3 is you focus on the why and not the what. And then step 4 is you pick one of the 2 pathways. And to be in full transparency, I have helped numerous of my clients walk these pathways. And I'm going to tell you that the ideal pathway is called the pivot. And the unideal pathway, but sometimes recommended or needed, is called the pause. And I'm going to break each one of these down for you right now. So what the pivot is this is genuinely the the ideal form. But if you're unwilling to give up your life the way that you have it now, right? Revenue being one of them. If you're unwilling to lose revenue, then small shifts can gradually align you with your passion. But the goal of a pivot is to keep incremental change at the forefront while maintaining momentum with what you have. And so it's not burning the ships and throwing out the way that you used to do it. It's making incremental changes to bring it into alignment and allowing momentum to stack and be able to continue moving forward. And so one of the analogies that I give when I'm teaching this and helping people with this is, if we live on an island and there is only one bridge from that island to the mainland, what the pivot is the pivot is allowing traffic to keep coming over that main bridge while we start to build the second bridge. And when the second bridge is built, we start to redirect some of that traffic over that second bridge until it can fully sustain the traffic load. And then we get to make a decision on if we close the other bridge, but we never knock it down. But it's really about incremental changes, right? And even a tangible example is, like, if you create content as an entrepreneur and you can no longer stand the way that you do it, but the way that you're doing it is currently creating results, then a pivot would look like adding a new 1 to 2 steps in the process that would still allow it to happen the way it happens now, while creating the result in the future that would allow us to buy your time back, or pull you out of that process, or hire a team member to be able to do the parts that are sticking for you. But patience and consistency is the biggest secret to executing a pivot in integrity. And so when you think about a pivot, I think it's also important to set expectations, because the length of the pivot to see different results depends on the depth of alignment and what's missing or what's not in alignment. And so if you're like, I can't stand my business at all, and you want the whole thing to feel in integrity, you don't like your meetings, you don't like your sales process, you don't like your delivery, then it's really going into the kitchen and building recipes bite by bite, which could take 3 to 4 to 5 months, right? But if you have a small pivot of, like, I just don't like that all my calls start at 9 a.m. And I really don't feel good until I start my calls at 10 a.m. every day because I want more time for myself. Well, that pivot to bring you in alignment and to allow more content creation time or client delivery time or customer journey time could be a matter of weeks as we build a plan to get there. But the pivot is the most ideal form and the powerful form because it's not taking massive swings. It's making micro adjustments to protect momentum and to protect the needle movers that matter to you. Just like if you have an existing set of clients and you love serving those clients, but you no longer want to serve new clients in the same offer, I would never tell you to get rid of all of your existing clients that are on retainer, but we can fulfill and deliver those while making new standards or values for the new ones coming in. And then the next batch that comes in will be in integrity with how you want to deliver it to buy back your time or your freedom to be able to scale your business. And so the timeline is completely dependent on the depth of the pivot or how much is out of alignment and gets to come back in. This includes with customer journey. And so then the second P is what we call the pause. And the timeline of the pause, and I'm just going to say this again, very rarely, and maybe 1 out of 100 times would I recommend a pause. But when we look at a pause is really stepping away completely, like literally removing ourselves from the business, removing ourselves from the day-to-day. And the timeline of the pause is completely dependent on the level of clarity that you're seeking or the level of pain that you or your business is currently causing or you're feeling. Because a pause could be a complete day off your phone, off your computer. It could be a weekend off. It could be a quarter off, a week, a month, or in one case with a client, a year. But the most important thing, if you're ever deciding to do a pause, is to be intentional, and I mean bullish, that you never catastrophize the business, nor how much time you need off for the clarity that you seek. Because the pause is the most aggressive, and I mean the most aggressive form of reset. And so in order to do this at the level that I'm speaking about, you need the financial reserves to operate from the point that you decide to take off until the point that you can generate sales again or generate clients again. And this can also have a lot of downstream effects, which aren't bad. They're not good. They're just things to be aware of. Like it can have an impact on your marketing and relevance because you're not top of mind anymore and online. It can have an impact on your podcast if you take a long pause because you need to regroup and people build habits with other shows and don't come back to yours. If you decide to completely stop emailing people because it doesn't feel an integrity anymore, those relationships will dwindle and it will take time to recover and might not recover back to the same state that you were. And so when you get into the pause, and the thing that I find is that because people operate out of alignment so much and try to force themselves to change, the pressure can sometimes lead to an unintentional pause instead of intentionally pivoting. And it can be hard to get back into the flow or the quote unquote old way of operating due to being out of the game for an extended period of time. And so it's really, really important to understand that our businesses being in alignment is the most important thing. Them being connected to our why is incredibly powerful because it's the energy and fuel source to keep going and keep noting. But to really, really win in the game is about finding when we're out of alignment and asking yourself the questions that I've given you today and going through the process, which is like my number one favorite thing to do with people is to bring it back into alignment. And the number one thing that we see is when you wake up and you're out of that dread or the frantic duck and you're excited about creating content or excited about delivery, that energy transfers and people's results go through the roof and their clients go through the roof and they get more clients or sales and their marketing gets easier. But you want to make sure that you're never unintentionally causing consequences or pain from being out of alignment at the deepest level. And so when it comes to falling back in love with your business or being aligned in your business, the only two paths that I've ever seen, and I've helped hundreds of entrepreneurs walk these paths, are to either pivot or to pause. And the pause is almost like a worst case scenario, like eject button now. But the pause can also be very beneficial if used intentionally. You can do it for a day. You can block off an entire weekend and shut off the business, shut off your phone, and allow things to happen as long as you do it intentionally to find clarity, to then come back into the business and work on pivoting it back into alignment. And so these are things that I've seen and I've helped many, many people with. And one that comes to mind directly is I had a client walk away from an $8 million business because the whole thing felt out of alignment and they were a slave to the business and they were a slave to their counter. They were a slave to their calls and they took a giant sabbatical and are now back and doing better than ever, happy and in alignment. But 99 out of 100 times, the pivot is the most powerful way. And this pivot and bringing it back into alignment applies into every single bucket of your business. It applies in your marketing. It applies in your sales. It applies in your delivery. It applies with your team. And most importantly, it applies with yourself. Because you as an entrepreneur grow. You grow every day. You learn things, your habits and behaviors change, your life outside of the business changes, but you have to be willing to make adjustments to that so you don't feel self-sacrificial and end up falling out of in love with the business or resenting the business in the process. And so I want to give you some questions to really, really sit with. And Keith Cunningham is an incredible author. He wrote a book called The Road Less Stupid. And in this book, he talks about the power of thinking time. And power of thinking time is intentionally you creating the space to sit with these questions and not necessarily look for answers instantly, but allow yourself the space to feel into them. Because we can logically think about them, but when we emotionally feel into them, we start to find the clarity and the pieces that we need. And I also want to say that pivoting is not a big deal. Pivoting is a requirement for success in entrepreneurship, and it doesn't have to be catastrophized. We don't have to run away and shut off the business and ignore our Instagram DMs and get overwhelmed and inundated. It's really about bringing things into alignment piece by piece and bite by bite as we find them, but also not trying to solve everything at once. It's bite by bite, iteration by iteration to bring it into alignment to allow momentum to continue. So I'm going to list you off a couple of questions, and I'm going to want you to sit with these questions, like genuinely take out a pen, take out a piece of paper, and I want you to set a date with yourself, whether it's 20 minutes a day, or you go sit for an hour, or you take a half a day this weekend and you go sit in nature, and you actually just sit with these questions. And I want you to be integrous, because if you remember, step number one of this process is acknowledging where you are with the utmost of integrity. And this isn't because you're bad and wrong. This doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It just means the outfits that you've been wearing don't fit anymore. And being radically honest about those things is what gives the triage nurse, which is you in this case, the actual symptom and the root cause to be able to adjust it and bring it into integrity. And I want you to sit with these questions, and I want you to answer these questions. So I'm going to give you the questions now. Question number one, am I avoiding my business because I don't enjoy it, or because it truly isn't aligned with who I am now? Am I avoiding my business because I don't enjoy it, or because it truly isn't aligned with who I am now? Question number two, what parts of my business no longer feel aligned with who I am today, and where do I feel called to go next? What parts of my business no longer feel aligned with who I am today, and where do I feel called to go next? So to give you an example of this, there was a season in my business where I was very resistant to social media because I was prioritizing my time as a father when my son was younger. And I was like, I can't be on the platform anymore. It makes me nauseous. It makes me sick. I'm emotional about it. And I went through a season of, I don't want to be on the platform writing captions and posting content, but I do want to be in the DMs connecting with people. And that's where I felt called to go. And so we made adjustments as a team, and it ended up being one of the most beautiful things that we did. And I just re-navigated this season. And in this season, I've actually been craving making stories and making reels and connecting with people. So I took it back over as my incredible CEO, Ashley, realized that she didn't like being on social media anymore. And so she took a big sabbatical, and she's completely off, and we're working better than ever. And so give yourself space to ask and answer these questions. Question number three, what would it look like, or what would happen if I did things my way, not the way other people told me I should? What would happen if I did things my way? That's question number three. Question number four, do I know what I want, or am I still exploring? Do I know what I want, or am I still exploring? And if you do know what you want, that's great. Write it down. And if you're still exploring, give yourself the permission slip to explore ideas and let that be okay as well. The next one, are you stuck because you hate or dislike the path that you're on? Are you stuck because you hate or dislike the path that you're on? The next one, am I genuinely still connected to what I'm selling or serving with? Does it still resonate with you? And I'll give you an example of this. I used to only teach email marketing, only teach email marketing, only teach email marketing. And I got really frustrated and burnt out over the years because that was all I was focusing on. My heart wasn't in it. My passion wasn't in it, but I still loved email, but not as the only way. And so we adjusted. And over the years, we've adjusted, and it's really focusing on the CEO mindset, which is the identity, a lot of what I'm talking today, then focusing on the customer journey, which email is now a part of, and then the marketing and messaging, which is how we tie those together to help companies scale. But email is still a core part of what I do. It's just no longer the only part. And I had to get connected to what I was really passionate about to be able to do it in integrity. And then the last question, and I love this question, is what would be the first step towards a different reality for you? Just like I said earlier, the results that we're living in today are a byproduct of the habits and choices we made 90 days prior. So in feeling these and answering these questions, and if anything resonated with you today, what would be the first step towards a different reality for you? And I want you to give yourself time and space to be able to find these answers, to be able to go through this process and have the clarity to bring your business into alignment, or bring your heart into alignment. And if I can help you in any way, and I genuinely mean this, I would love nothing more than to get on a 15-minute Zoom call with you, have a cup of coffee, and talk about any of this, whether it's in your marketing or in your messaging or in your sales or in your delivery or in your customer journey or in your content creation or any bucket in business that you know I speak about. And it would be an absolute honor to help you navigate these and help you pivot. Because like I said earlier, this is the core of what I do to even build and scale businesses. Is we hit a plateau, we hit a sticking point, we're not acquiring any more customers, and we come in and we find clarity on how to bring that next level and then pivot into it, allowing the business to grow and scale. And so this is completely normal. It is completely okay to acknowledge those clothes don't fit anymore. It's completely okay to say, I don't want to wear that outfit from junior high anymore. It's completely okay to feel and recognize, like, I really don't like how I do this anymore. Or I don't like that process, or I don't like the way that feels. And it's completely okay to have that clarity, because that clarity is the first step in you bringing it into alignment and falling back in love with your business. And so if you'd love to jump on a call, if you want to have a cup of coffee virtual, I take a Americano, even though you can't deliver that to me, I would love nothing more. But I would love for you to shoot me a message after this episode on Instagram. My Instagram is @GeorgeBryant, and share any clarity that you got and answering these questions or things that I've said. And if you want to jump on a call and talk about this, just shoot me a DM that says, hey, I want to jump on a call. Let's have a customer call. Let's have that virtual cup of coffee. And I would love nothing more than to serve your face off and help you navigate this, as I'm also recognizing that this is one of my superpowers and why God has given me the business and the life and the mile markers and the breakdowns that he has, because this is what entrepreneurship looks like. This is what success looks like. And we get to allow ourselves to grow in the process. And the number one superpower that we all have that we can stack in our corner is being aligned with things that we do, feeling excited about the things that we do, loving what we do, and feeling in possibility and belief about it, because that's the energy that actually gets the results that we're looking for. And so that's been another episode today. I'm going to go finish chugging my protein shake, go record an intro for this show, and go back to recording another one. So I love you to pieces. I cannot wait to see you. Can't wait to connect, and I cannot wait to read your DMs. And so shoot me a DM, shoot me a message with your biggest takeaway, if you want to get a cup of virtual coffee. Have a beautiful day. I love you to pieces. Remember that relationships will always beat algorithms. So I'll either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're out.